I discovered my wife had silenced my calls while I buried my mother, and I calmly watched our marriage collapse under the weight of her betrayal. Abandoned. But nothing prepared me for seeing those words on my phone screen: all calls from this contact will be silenced. 2 weeks. My wife had muted my calls for 2 weeks while I was away handling my mother's funeral arrangements. The discovery hit me like a physical blow, leaving me struggling to breathe in the quiet of my hotel room. The cancer had taken Mom quickly, too quickly. One moment she was complaining about back pain, the next I was being told she had 3 months to live. She barely made it 6 weeks. I needed my wife during this time more than I'd ever needed anyone. I called her daily, sometimes twice a day, desperate for the comfort of her voice, for any sign that I wasn't completely alone in my grief. She must be busy, I told myself. The first few days she's probably swamped at work. But as days passed with only brief, cold text messages in response, something in my gut told me something wasn't right. Each night, I'd fall asleep staring at the unanswered calls on my screen, wondering what could possibly be more important than being there for me during the worst time of my life. I flew back early, intending to surprise her. Mom's house had been cleared out, the funeral was over, and all that remained was paperwork that could wait. I needed to be home, to feel my wife's arms around me, to finally let myself fully grieve with her support. When I entered our apartment, the silence was deafening. She wasn't home yet. I sat on the couch, exhausted from travel and emotion, when a notification lit up her tablet on the coffee table. Normally I wouldn't look. I respected her privacy. But something, call it intuition or desperation, made me reach for it. The lock screen showed a preview of a message that made my blood run cold. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. The sender's name was hidden, but the message was clear enough. My hands shook as I set the tablet down exactly as I'd found it. I pulled out my phone and called her one more time, watching the tablet screen remain dark. No notification, no ring, nothing. I checked her phone settings remotely through our shared account, a feature we'd set up years ago for emergencies. And there it was, plain as day. My contact had been muted 2 weeks ago, precisely when I'd flown out after receiving the news about Mom's terminal diagnosis. The timing wasn't coincidental. She'd silenced me deliberately, precisely when I needed her most, and now I understood why. While I was arranging my mother's funeral, crying myself to sleep in empty hotel rooms, my wife had been living a completely different life, one where I was an inconvenience to be muted. I heard keys in the door. I quickly wiped away the tears I hadn't realized were streaming down my face. As she walked in, her face registered shock, then something that looked almost like guilt before she composed herself. "You're back early," she said, her voice tense. "You should have told me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. 5 years of marriage, and suddenly I didn't recognize the woman standing before me. Something had changed in those 2 weeks, something fundamental and irreversible. The realization was crystallizing in my mind. She had chosen to abandon me during the most painful moment of my life. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "But first, I need to know something. Why did you mute my calls?" Her face paled, and in that moment I knew this wasn't a simple oversight or a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of the end. And despite the crushing weight of grief already on my shoulders, I straightened my back. I would not break. I would not beg for explanations or plead for her attention. She opened her mouth to speak, but I already knew whatever came out would be a lie. The truth was in her eyes, in the way she couldn't hold my gaze. The truth was in those 2 weeks of silence when I needed her most. The truth was in that message lighting up her tablet. I had buried my mother, and now I was about to bury my marriage. But unlike with Mom, this death was a betrayal I could respond to. In response, I would. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing second. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. She clutched her purse to her chest like a shield. "My phone's been acting up," she finally said. "I've been missing notifications. From everyone." A lie so easy to disprove. Yet, she said it without hesitation. I nodded slowly, not bothering to challenge her. Instead, I stood up and walked to our bedroom, hearing her nervous footsteps behind me. "I'm tired from the flight," I said, my voice hollow. "I need to shower and rest." Once alone, I locked the bathroom door and let the shower run to mask any sound. With steady hands, I began my investigation. Her tablet had given me a clue, but I needed more. I logged into our shared cloud account from my phone. We'd set it up years ago, photos, contacts, calendars, all synced between our devices, a decision she clearly had forgotten about. Within minutes, I had my answers. Location history showed regular visits to an address I didn't recognize. Text messages revealed conversations with a contact saved under a female name, an obvious attempt at deception. Photos I was never meant to see. All while my mother was dying. All while I was calling her, desperate for comfort. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the deliberate choice to silence me during the most painful period of my life. It was calculated cruelty. When I emerged from the bathroom, she was sitting on our bed, scrolling through her phone with practiced nonchalance. She glanced up, offering a tentative smile that never reached her eyes. "Are you hungry? I could order something," she suggested, as if this were any normal evening, as if I hadn't just discovered that our entire marriage was a facade. "Sure," I replied, matching her casual tone. "Whatever you want." The takeout arrived 30 minutes later. We ate in near silence, the TV providing background noise neither of us was paying attention to. I watched her carefully, noticing how frequently she checked her phone, angling the screen away from me. Once it vibrated, and her whole body tensed before she excused herself to the bathroom. While she was gone, I contemplated confronting her immediately. The evidence was overwhelming. The rage building inside me demanded release. But something stopped me, a cold, calculating voice that urged patience. I wasn't going to react emotionally. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Instead, I made a decision. This wouldn't be a messy, emotional confrontation. This would be a strategic dismantling of the life we built. She had betrayed me during my darkest hour. The consequences would be deliberate and absolute. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed, a chasm between us. I felt her glance at me occasionally, perhaps wondering if I suspected anything. I feigned sleep, my mind racing with next steps. Morning came, and she announced she had to go into the office for a few hours. On a Saturday, another transparent lie. I nodded, told her to take her time. The door had barely closed behind her when I began moving with purpose. First, I called my bank and transferred my portion of our joint savings into a separate account. Next, I contacted a divorce attorney I'd researched during my sleepless night, leaving a message requesting an urgent appointment. Then, I began documenting everything: screenshots of messages, photos, location data. Clinical, methodical, detached. My phone buzzed with a message from her: "Running late. Don't wait up for dinner." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I drove to the address I'd found in her location history. It was an upscale apartment complex across town. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, I watched as she pulled into the parking garage. I took photos, noting the time and date. Evidence. Back at our apartment, I packed a small bag with essentials. I wasn't running away. This was tactical. I needed space to think clearly, to plan my next move without her watching my every reaction. As I was about to leave, her tablet lit up again. Another message from him. "Left something for you on the counter." So casual, so comfortable. This wasn't new. This had been going on long before my mother's diagnosis. The realization should have crushed me. Instead, it hardened my resolve. I had just lost my mother, the one person who had loved me unconditionally. Now I was losing my wife, not to death, but to her own selfish choices. The pain was transforming into something cold and focused. I checked into a hotel downtown. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I stared at my phone. Her contact information stared back at me. 5 years of marriage, countless messages and calls, memories and promises. With 3 taps, I blocked her number. It wasn't an emotional decision. It was strategic. She wanted silence. I would give her silence. But unlike her, I would do it openly, directly, and permanently. This was just the beginning of my response to her betrayal. She had no idea what was coming next. My phone exploded with notifications throughout the night, text messages, missed calls, voicemails, all from her. I didn't read or listen to any of them. Each desperate attempt at contact only confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't concerned about me. She was concerned about herself, about being caught. The next morning, I met with the divorce attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened without judgment as I laid out the situation. I presented the evidence I'd gathered, the messages, photos, location data. She nodded, taking notes. "You've done more homework than most clients," she commented. "That will serve you well." We discussed strategy. Georgia being a no-fault state meant infidelity wouldn't necessarily impact the division of assets, but my documentation would help establish a pattern of deception that could prove useful during negotiations. I signed the necessary paperwork to initiate divorce proceedings, feeling a strange sense of calm as I wrote my signature. Most people are emotional wrecks when they first come to see me, the attorney observed as we concluded our meeting. You seem focused. I buried my mother last week, I replied. This is just another funeral, except this time, I'm not grieving something real. Leaving her office, I checked my voicemail. 15 messages. The last one caught my attention. It wasn't from my wife, but from my father-in-law. Son, we need to talk. She's beside herself. Whatever's happened, you two can work it out. Call me back. So, she'd already rallied her family, playing the victim. I deleted the message without responding. Back at the hotel, I created a list of everyone who needed to be informed about our separation. Friends, family, our landlord. I wasn't going to hide or be ashamed. I hadn't done anything wrong. I drafted a simple, factual message that I would send at the appropriate time. I wanted to let you know that we are divorcing due to her infidelity. I appreciate your respect for my privacy during this time. No emotional appeals, no details, just the truth. My phone rang again. Her mother this time. I declined the call, then another from a mutual friend. The campaign to pressure me had begun. I turned my phone off completely and focused on my next steps. That afternoon, I returned to our apartment when I knew she would be at work. I needed to retrieve important documents and sentimental items, things I couldn't risk losing in whatever storm was coming. My mother's photo albums, family heirlooms, financial records. As I packed these into boxes, I noticed small changes in the apartment, candles I'd never seen before, a new throw blanket. She'd been redecorating while I was burying my mother. The thought should have hurt. Instead, it reinforced my decision. As I was about to leave, the door opened. She stood there, eyes red from crying, looking shocked to see me. You came back, she said, relief flooding her voice. She stepped toward me, arms outstretched. I stepped back. I'm just collecting some things. Her expression shifted instantly from relief to anger. You blocked my number. You disappeared without a word. Do you have any idea what you've put me through? The audacity was almost impressive. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never noticed before, a complete absence of empathy. She wasn't concerned about what I'd been through, about my mother, about her betrayal. She was only concerned about how my reaction affected her. I know about him, I said simply. I know you've been seeing someone while I was arranging my mother's funeral. I know you muted my calls deliberately. She froze, then quickly recovered. It's not what you think. Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. I have the messages, the photos, the location data. I know exactly when it started and how often you were with him, including last night. Her face paled. You've been spying on me. No, I've been discovering the truth about my wife. She switched tactics, tears welling in her eyes. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But we can work through this. We have 5 years together. You can't throw that away over one indiscretion. It wasn't one indiscretion. It was dozens, carefully planned, deliberately hidden. I picked up my boxes. And it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, a series of choices actually. Every time you silenced my call while I sat alone in a hospital, every time you lied about where you were, those were all choices. She followed me to the door, her voice rising with desperation. Where are you going? We need to talk about this, you can't just walk away. I paused at the threshold, turning to face her one last time. You walked away first. You just thought I wouldn't notice. The door closed behind me, cutting off her protests. In the hallway, I took a deep breath. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't cracked. The pain was there, deep and real, but it wasn't controlling me. I was in control. My phone buzzed with a text from the attorney confirming she'd filed the initial paperwork. Everything was in motion now. There would be no grand confrontation, no emotional scene for her to manipulate, just the cold, methodical dismantling of what we'd built. She wanted to mute me from her life when it was convenient. Now I would delete her from mine permanently. The next 3 days followed a predictable pattern. Her attempts at contact grew increasingly desperate. Calls from different numbers, messages from mutual friends, even an unexpected visit from her sister to my hotel that the front desk thankfully intercepted. Each attempt reinforced my resolve. The divorce paperwork was filed. My attorney assured me we'd done everything properly. Now came the hardest part, waiting for her to be served, waiting for the legal wheels to turn. On the 4th day, I received a text from a colleague at work. She's here in the office lobby. Looks upset. Security is asking what to do. I felt a flash of anger at this invasion of my workplace. She was escalating, trying to force a confrontation on her terms. I texted back, Tell security to escort her out. I'll handle this. I called her directly from my office phone. When she answered, the hope in her voice was palpable. "You finally called," she said. "We need to talk in person." "Please leave my workplace now," I replied, keeping my voice level. "If you want to communicate, do it through my attorney. Her contact information was in the papers you received yesterday." "Papers?" Her voice cracked. "What papers?" So she was pretending she hadn't been served. Another manipulation tactic. "You know exactly what I'm referring to. Leave now or I'll have security remove you." I hung up before she could respond. Through my office window, I watched as security escorted her from the building. She looked up, scanning the windows as if trying to spot me. I stepped back out of sight. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was him, her lover. "This has gone too far. You're hurting her. Man to man, we need to talk." The audacity was almost laughable. I blocked the number without responding. Later that evening, I met with a real estate agent to discuss selling our shared condo. The market was strong, and she was confident we could get an excellent price. Another piece of the dismantling process falling into place. As I returned to my hotel, the front desk attendant handed me an envelope. "She left this for you, sir. Insisted it was important." Inside was a handwritten letter, pages long, detailing her regrets, her excuses, her promises to change. The writing was smeared in places with what I assumed were tears, a performance piece crafted for maximum emotional impact. I read it once clinically, as if reviewing a document from a stranger. Then I tore it into pieces and dropped it into the trash bin. The time for words had passed. My phone rang. My father-in-law again. After a moment's consideration, I answered. "She's devastated," he began without preamble. "Whatever she did, you need to at least talk to her." "Did she tell you what she did?" I asked. A pause. "She said she made a mistake." "Ask her for specifics," I suggested. "Ask her why she muted my calls while my mother was dying. Ask her who she was with during those 2 weeks. Then decide if you still want to make this call. Everyone makes mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Multiple choices made repeatedly with full awareness of the consequences." He tried another angle. "Your mother just passed. You're not thinking clearly. Grief makes us do extreme things. Actually, grief brings clarity. It strips away pretense. It shows us what really matters." After more circular arguments, I ended the call. Her family would never be objective. They would always see her as the victim. It didn't matter. The next morning, I woke to an email from my attorney. Our court date was set for next month. She had requested temporary access to our joint finances, which had been denied based on my documentation, showing she had her own substantial income. I spent the day viewing apartments across town. I found one I liked. Modern, minimalist, a fresh start. I signed a 6-month lease on the spot using part of my recent inheritance from my mother. The irony wasn't lost on me, my mother's passing providing the means for my new beginning. That evening, my phone rang with another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Please come home." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, I'll do anything." "There's nothing to do," I replied. "It's over. Don't you even want to know why?" "No." A beat of silence. "Then, you're being cruel." "No, I'm being final." I hung up and blocked that number too. Later, I ordered dinner to my hotel room and ate while reviewing the separation agreement my attorney had drafted. The terms were fair but firm. I would not be manipulated or guilted into concessions. As I signed the document, I realized something surprising. I felt no anger anymore, no hurt, just a clear-eyed determination to close this chapter of my life with dignity. She had silenced me when I needed her most. Now I was doing the same, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. Some connections, once broken, cannot and should not be repaired. A week passed. The tempo of her desperate attempts at contact slowed as reality set in. My attorney informed me she had finally hired her own lawyer, a sign she was accepting the inevitability of our divorce. Progress. I moved into my new apartment on a Saturday, bringing only what was undeniably mine. Furniture, appliances, the shared trappings of our marriage, I left it all behind. Material things could be replaced. My self-respect couldn't. That afternoon, I received a text from a mutual friend. She's asking everyone where you've moved to. Says she wants to return some of your things. I replied simply, "Any items can be sent to my attorney's office." My phone rang immediately. It was the friend. "Look," he said, "I'm not taking sides here, but don't you think you're being a bit extreme? She's a mess. At least talk to her. I'm curious, I replied. Did she tell you why we're divorcing? A pause. She said it was complicated, that you both made mistakes. Both. I let out a laugh that held no humor. Ask her what mistakes I made other than trusting my wife. Everyone deserves a second chance. Not everyone. Not for everything. I ended the call feeling a familiar weariness. The pattern was clear. She was controlling the narrative, positioning herself as the victim of my unreasonable behavior rather than the architect of her own consequences. That evening, I blocked social media accounts and changed email addresses, not out of spite, but necessity. Each contact was like picking at a healing wound. 3 days later, my attorney called. She's offering a settlement. Wants to avoid court. The terms were surprisingly reasonable. She would keep the condo and assume the mortgage. I would keep my retirement accounts and investments. A clean break financially. What's the catch? I asked. She wants a face-to-face meeting. Says there are things that can only be said in person. I considered this. Part of me wanted to refuse outright, but another part, the part that had loved her for 5 years, wanted closure. 1 hour, public place. My attorney present. We met at a cafe downtown. My attorney sat beside me, her presence a buffer against emotional manipulation. When she walked in, I was struck by how different she looked. Thinner, eyes shadowed, hair pulled back severely. She brought reinforcements, too. Her sister, who glared at me as they sat down. Thank you for meeting me, she began. I nodded, waiting. This was her show. I know I hurt you, she continued. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to understand why. The why doesn't matter, I said. It does to me. Her voice cracked. I was scared. Your mother's illness. It brought back everything about my father's death. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't be what you needed. So instead of telling me that, you chose to betray me, to silence me when I needed you most. She looked down. I didn't know how to tell you. You were already dealing with so much. That's what marriage is, I replied. Dealing with the hard things together. I know that now. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I moved it away. Please. Everyone makes mistakes. Stop calling it a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner. What you did was a series of deliberate choices. Her sister interjected. You're being cruel. She's trying to apologize. I don't want an apology. I want a divorce. Because your pride is hurt, the sister snapped. I turned to her. No, because trust is broken permanently. My attorney tapped her watch, reminding me of our time limit. I nodded and stood up. The settlement terms are acceptable. Have your lawyer finalize the paperwork. She grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. Please, I still love you. I looked at her hand until she removed it. Love without respect isn't love. It's just attachment. Goodbye. Outside, my attorney nodded approvingly. You handled that well. Many clients break down in these meetings. I did my breaking down already. When my mother died, when I discovered her betrayal. Now I'm just finishing what she started. That night, alone in my new apartment, I finally opened the last box of my mother's belongings, photos, letters, small mementos of her life. Among them, I found a note she'd written to me shortly before her death. Remember what I always told you? We can't control what happens to us, only how we respond to it. Choose responses you won't regret later. I folded the note carefully and placed it in my wallet. My mother had faced death with dignity and grace. I would face this ending the same way. The next morning, I received confirmation that she had signed the settlement agreement. No more negotiations, no more meetings. In 6 weeks, our divorce would be final. That evening, I changed my phone number, the final digital severing of our connection. She had muted me when I needed her voice the most. Now I was ensuring she would never hear mine again. 6 months have passed since our divorce was finalized. 6 months of rebuilding, of learning to exist as an individual rather than half of a couple. The process hasn't been linear. Some days were harder than others, but none were as hard as those first days after my mother's death when I called desperately for comfort and found only silence. 3 months ago, I deleted the last digital photographs of our marriage, not in anger but as part of my ongoing commitment to move forward. The past deserves respect, but not reverence, not when it's built on lies. My new life has taken shape in ways I couldn't have anticipated. The apartment no longer feels temporary, I've made it mine. My work has improved, colleagues have noticed my increased focus and productivity. Without the constant drain of maintaining a facade, I found energy for things that matter. Last month, she made her final attempt at contact, a package delivered to my office. She'd finally tracked down my new workplace. Inside was a small box containing my mother's wedding ring, which I thought lost during the chaos of her final days in hospice. A note accompanied it. Found this when cleaning out the guest room. Thought you should have it. Please call if you want to talk. I kept the ring. Ignored the request. Some doors should remain closed. 2 weeks ago, I ran into her father at a local grocery store. I braced for hostility, but he surprised me. "You look well," he said, eyes assessing me carefully. "I am well," I replied honestly. He nodded. "She's not. Hasn't been since." He trailed off. "I'm sorry to hear that," and I was. Despite everything, I didn't wish her suffering. "She's seeing a therapist now. Says she's working on herself." He hesitated. "She asks about you sometimes. There's nothing to tell." He studied me for a moment. "You know, when my wife left me 30 years ago, I fought it, begged her to stay, made myself pathetic." A rueful smile crossed his face. "I've always respected how you handled things, clean, dignified. Wish I'd had that strength." We parted with a handshake, no anger, no guilt, just the quiet acknowledgement of one man to another. Last week, a mutual friend let slip that she's moving to another state, starting over. In a strange way, I hope she finds what she's looking for, not for her sake, but for whoever she becomes involved with next. Some lessons need to be learned to prevent future casualties. Yesterday, I visited my mother's grave. Sat there talking to her as the afternoon sun warmed the headstone. Told her about the past 6 months, about the divorce, about my new life. In the quiet of that cemetery, I felt something shift within me, the last weight of anger lifting away. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. This morning, I woke to a notification on my phone, a social media algorithm, oblivious to human complexities, suggesting I reconnect with her. A digital ghost from a deleted past. I adjusted my settings to ensure it wouldn't happen again. There have been opportunities for new relationships. I've approached them cautiously, not from fear, but respect for my own boundaries. I'm selective about who earns access to my life. Now, trust is no longer given freely. It must be earned through consistency and transparency. Some people call my response to her betrayal extreme. "You completely erased her," one friend remarked, like she never existed. But that misses the point. I didn't erase her. I erased the connection between us. The difference is crucial. When she muted my calls during the darkest period of my life, she made a statement about my value in her life. When I removed her from mine, I simply took her at her word. The most important lesson from all of this hasn't been about her betrayal, but about my response to it. I've learned that dignity isn't measured by what others do to you, but by what you refuse to do to yourself afterward. I refuse to beg for explanations, refuse to accept hollow apologies, refuse to compromise my self-respect for the comfort of false reconciliation. Some would call that pride. I call it self-preservation. Last night, I deleted the final reminder of our relationship, her contact information and my emergency records at work. The HR director asked if I wanted to add someone new. "Not yet," I said, "but I will when the time is right." That's the distinction between moving on and running away. I'm not avoiding connection out of fear. I'm waiting for connections worthy of trust. She silenced me for 2 weeks when I needed her most. In response, I didn't just mute her. I deleted her from my life's contact list, not temporarily, not in anger, but permanently, and with the calm certainty of a decision that honors my worth. The phone in my pocket now contains only connections that have proven themselves reliable. People who would never silence me in my darkest hour, people who understand that love without respect is just manipulation wearing a convincing mask. She once asked if I would ever forgive her. I told her forgiveness wasn't the issue. Consequences were. Some actions change relationships permanently. Some bells cannot be unrung. As I finish writing this, my new phone pings with messages from friends checking in, from colleagues respecting my input, from family offering genuine support. These are the connections I've chosen to keep. The lessons from those 2 weeks of silence were painful but invaluable. When someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. When someone demonstrates what you're worth to them, believe that too, and then act accordingly. Not with rage, but with resolve. The empty space she left has been filled with self-respect. In the choice between maintaining a broken connection and preserving my dignity, I chose dignity every single time, and I've never regretted it for a moment. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.